Okay, Mr. Bozzi, we are live.
All right. Hey, everyone. Do you want me to share the agenda? We can do that if you guys would like, if you don't have the appropriate data.
I don't know. I have it up on my computer, so.
Okay.
I've got a full copy of everything in case somebody needs to look at something.
All right. Sounds good. So just real quick before we start, for anybody that's on non-board member, we did appoint new committees, new chairperson for each committee. The only update that has not been fully communicated at this point as far as our listing is Shelley Jordan is our newest member. We added her to the committee lists that she's going to be part of, and she is going to chair one of our committees, which is the compensation and committee. So we're going to make that adjustment. But for tonight, I don't think we really have anything on that tonight, but just making everyone aware of that. If you want, Hal, you can kick it off with finance.
Okay, very good. We have acceptance of the reports. We have December's Treasurer's Report, Cafeteria Fund, Building Fund, and Capital Project Funds. Does anybody have any questions on that, Anthony or Heather?
Nope.
Heather, I think you're muted.
No, I don't.
Oh, there you go.
Okay, thank you. Then the check summary has a total of $959,238.51. All the paperwork was there with what we got. Any questions on that?
No.
And then in the folders, I had included one more, Hal. I thought you were going to be here this evening, so I didn't email it.
Yeah,
The total was $33,833.79, and the other board members have it as the last document in their folder.
okay, thank you.
Yeah, Doug, there's an REC. I do have one for the REC for $11,503. Is that our electric bill?
Yes.
Impressive. Now is that like so many months?
No, that's a month.
That's impressive.
Why, you thought that was a good deal, Anthony?
Hey, I think that's like the 10% discount for high energy users, right?
Yeah, fortunately, in the warmer months, since we really don't have air conditioning in the building, that drops off considerably. So, yeah, that's just
well,
the highest usage is this period.
I seen 11/20/21, 12/20/21, and then 11/1/22. So I didn't know if that was for 3 months, but
well, there's 3 different bills. It's broken up for the high school, the elementary, and then the biomass. So.
Anything else on check registers?
Nope.
Auditorium payment requests. Are we about done with those, Doug?
Yeah, they're like I said, they'll be really dwindling now. This was through December, and we're just waiting on those couple last hardware pieces, and they'll then be working through HEPCO's retainage and punch list just to make sure that everything is completed before they'll pay the last. So they'll be doing a last payroll notification. You know, they receive all the payrolls from the subcontractors. They'll review those, and then we'll get a last HEPCO with retainage. And probably, I would imagine we'll get another MHE, but for this project, that should be about it then. Then the only other would be when we start on the other project, MHE will pick up with that then.
Okay, thank you. Information item, mileage rates going up to 58.5 cents, up from 56 cents. That probably not going to make the difference in $1 a gallon gas, but while we're on there and capital projects fund, I just have a question, Doug. Where
Yeah.
are we with our addition?
Meeting this month. That's what I was just talking to Joe Fitzgerald. We'll get that coordinated with the committee. And it won't be on a Tuesday night. We've had a hard time trying to get them lined up for that. And then, we're at the step to bid. So as soon as we look at their final design, then we should give the authorization as a board to bid. And then, that's a 2-month long process, then acceptance. And then, we could be breaking ground by May.
Well, that's a good time to start.
Yep.
I don't have anything else for the treasurer. Anybody else? Anthony, Hannah?
Nope.
Not for me.
Okay. We're probably ahead on time.
Yes. We can probably use the time a little bit here because we can't kick off buildings and grounds till 6:20. The other committees are pretty progressive in regards to timing. This was always the longest one, which is okay. But I'll use the time now just to reiterate what we had talked about. Next month, we will not have the committee of the whole meeting. We'll start to navigate towards the committee chairs running separate meetings if necessary, whether it be through physical meetings at the school or virtual meetings or phone calls. The one thing I do want to bring out, though, from the public perspective is that the intent of our engagement of the specific committees is that we have gotten feedback that, a bit of confusion in regards to, hey, when do we speak? We've come to the committee meetings, but then we're not sure if we're supposed to speak at the committee meetings. And then when we go to the regular meeting, we don't know if we can speak then. And I do want to give you the confidence that we do want to hear and get engagement from the stakeholders, which does include the public. So as we navigate through the rest of the year, we're gonna try this on for size and essentially to give you an idea of how will this work if you have something you want to address. Is that if a board member or an administrator or someone has an issue that they want to address or you want to address to the school, good or bad, we'll likely put that in the hands of the chairperson for that committee. They'll likely take you through the chain of command process if it's something that they want to talk about. Example would be you have a question about assessments or something. Probably not something you need to go directly to the board for. So you'll likely get questions like, have you talked to the teacher? Have you talked to the administration? And we'll navigate through it that way, but we do want to encourage your participation. So as we move forward, a bit of change is that, and I don't mean to be a broken record on this, but the committee of the whole meetings were essentially a review of the proposed agenda for the following meeting, which we will still do. I think there's still an expectation that the board will have an agenda to review prior to 2 weeks prior to the meeting, or I don't know if it's actually 2 weeks, but it's the Thursday prior to the first Tuesday. That way we can pose questions if and when required. And then we'll utilize the time frame during the regularly scheduled board meetings for the board committee chairs to chat through some of the items of interest or things that they want to talk about. With us having a few more minutes here before we can even get started, does anybody have any comments or questions on that at this point? I know it's new. We won't get emotionally attached to it. If it doesn't work, we'll adjust it and change it, but we're going to give it a shot.
I mean, I guess I'm curious, Gabe, to what extent should we, and you can also say we talk about this offline, but, to what extent would I, as a committee chair, right? Like sit down between now and February and start to map out, and discuss with other committee members, like, are we going to meet? What are we going to talk about? Is that something you want us to initiate or kind of wait on?
No, I think you could have those conversations, and I think that the goal here, if you look at what can a board do and not do, I think us navigating through the cultural change of opening up a little bit more discussion across the board with individualized committees is that as long as you limit a committee to 4 members or less, that is not a majority or a quorum. So just again, I'm speaking more from the public aspect that we're not going to be making any firm decisions or voting or anything like that. Nothing to that effect occurs during these committee meetings. So as these committees are formed, we're conscientious of the fact that these aren't really, they're not executive sessions. They're open for dialogue and discussion. But I would like to see the committee chairs do what works for them best. It is okay to have a conversation and a phone call. It is okay to schedule a meeting, let people know if they want to attend. They can. Stakeholders could be coaches, teachers, public, whomever you think is needed. We just need to be cautious that we don't end up with 6 board members at the same meeting, because then that gets into a different land of how we announce the meetings. And what I'm describing is not very different from what a lot of other districts do as well. So I think we'll sort of navigate through this and try it on for size, but I would encourage the chairs to identify what works best for them.
I just have a question, Gabe, if we're going to do this. So I have my committee, the finance committee meeting on Monday night, and then on Tuesday night, somebody else wants to have a meeting, and on Wednesday night, somebody else has another committee has a meeting, and some of us are on several committees, and all of a sudden, rather than trying to do this all in one night, I'm out Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday.
I never thought that question would come up.
Well, it did.
No, I think that is why there's a real, I think what this is going to drive is it's going to drive interest by the members of the board, right? So what's happening right now is everyone's on 5 or 6 committees, because that's how it always was. I'm not suggesting that anybody deletes themselves from a specific committee, but I do believe that where the interests lie, I think is can and should be the focal point. So, and what I also mean by that is I don't think there's an expectation of if you're on a particular committee that you actually have to attend all the meetings. So I hate to always use this as an example, but when I sat on the board at Montgomery, they navigated their committees similar to what I'm describing. Most board members were only a member of 1 or 2 committees. They were small in nature, and then they pulled in people as needed or required, and it made a real nimble aspect to what items were necessary. And again, not suggesting you have a fallout and don't want to be part of it, but I think we just need to try this and see how it works. And then we kind of gauge feedback after 30 or 60 days and say, all right, this is not functioning the way that we thought it was going to. But I think it's going, and Doug, you can hop in if you want, but I'm not suggesting that the board develops the agenda. But in the past, I can honestly say the board had almost 0 input on the navigation of the items. Most of it is reactive based on the requirements of the district. And I don't mean that negatively. It's just like, hey, we have to conduct business. We have to move forward. These are the things that need to be done and need to be voted on.
Yeah, that's what you're seeing on the agendas are essentially the business, the housekeeping that we have to complete each month, and of course it cycles through the months depending on what the requirements are. But that's what you'll see. My items are there, and then I guess what Gabe is expecting that the committees will develop their own projects, and then those would be placed on the agenda.
Yeah, and I think I think, for example, too, Hal, to chat about what you were talking with, and for some reason I can't get my screen share to navigate. It's locked up. Sorry, but if you were to look at, say, transportation, there's really nothing on there. I don't think there's a heavy need for every committee to meet every month either.
I agree with that. But my problem is, if I have a committee meeting and then 2 days later, Doug sends me the reports and all this, and all of a sudden now I got to have another committee meeting because now I have the reports and you know what I mean? When are we going to discuss? At least when what we're doing now, even if it may not be perfect, at least we're, you know, it's all there, and there's an other there. I can add things. We can discuss things just like we're discussing things now. But you know, so I tell Doug, and they used to be. Maybe it's a good time. Monday at 1 o'clock will be the before the board meeting will be the committee meeting for finance, for instance.
I think I understand what you're saying. I think the developed cadence of that will be based upon, you know, when these reports are derived, and as far as, you know, the necessary time for a meeting. I would say the finance committee would likely be the most advantageous to potentially not let go. Like, we don't want to have a finance meeting once a quarter, I don't think. But at the same time, in my opinion, you know, we're meeting here to go over this agenda. You guys got the agenda, you reviewed it at your home. We can accomplish those exact things, you know, while also not necessarily having a meeting of the whole. Because I think the change would have been, like, let's just say, for example, we're trying this new thing out. You would not necessarily had to have done anything this month. You would have gotten feedback. Hey, does anybody have any issues? Is there any questions? We could have handled it, and then there wouldn't be. I think my view on finance committee meetings is because Doug is he's positioned to develop a budget. What happens is it's reactive wait. So no one does anything with the budget until Doug produces the first go around, and then we barely look at it. It doesn't have any integration of futuristic planning. It's based on what he needs. So that's my viewpoint. I know we're getting long-winded on this, and we can start here in a couple minutes on the next committee. But the point being is that I think the cultural change that we're trying to search for is that when we look at the comprehensive planning for the district, you know, what's next? So over the course of the next 6 months, we have to start talking about that, so he could maybe even consider doing it in the next 12 months in regards to budget preparation. That's the intent, not necessarily to review the agenda and see if anybody has any questions, and then we'll have a meeting on it. It's more about the futuristic aspect of planning to say, hey, we want lights on the baseball field. We want new batting cages. We want the gymnasium redone. We want whatever. Here's the visionary aspects. We need, you know, evaluation of there's money to be spent on the curriculum. This is what needs to happen. How does the curriculum and the finance team get together and identify what that means? I'm just making up examples, but it will get us out of the culture of having these meetings just to review what Doug has put on the table. That's what I'm after.
So Gabe, I think if I'm following you correctly, I've had a couple phone calls over the last month. I've looked into them. I realized that they involve Anthony as the chair. So tonight, when Anthony brings up his committee, I'm going to bring those points to the table. Then if we need more information, Anthony and the members that are in that group can get together and figure things out. Is that correct?
Yeah, 100%. And
okay.
I think
you won't be at the committee meeting to bring that up because they have.
No, I'm going to bring them up tonight.
Yeah, but I mean, this is because the way we're running now. But when we have the new committee meetings,
So
you
let me
won't be there.
answer this one. So what it's going to be tonight is tonight's going to kick off what I'm going to do for next month. So with Crystal's questions, I'm going to jot them down. More than likely, I don't have an answer for, and I don't want to give any false information. So what I'll do is I'll take those questions, formulate some sort of agenda that I want to do with the committee. We'll meet as us four, and then that's what we talk about next month. Now, that's not saying that in between that time, I don't get an email from Aaron, from Ms. Jordan, from our principals. So then I add that to what we discuss. What's kind of got me a little concerned is no other, well, I don't want to say no other, but most districts in our area don't do this committee of the whole, and they make it work. So we have the examples all around us on how we can move forward with it, and they're successful about it. So I'm not too concerned.
And another point is we have to get beyond a week before the meeting rush to agenda items and topics. That's what we have. So right now we're conditioned as a board that we get the information on Tuesday. We have a week to decipher it, and then we use that week in this meeting to identify how we're going to react to it. So what happens is things like if we don't post the coaching position now, we're going to miss the deadline. Anthony should be talking about that 3 months in advance, 6 months in advance. I'm just using that as an example. So this is going to provide us. We're going to be forced to be a proactive versus reactive to these things. Looking at our agenda and developing items of topics of discussion off of it is not proactive.
I do have one question, I guess, though, which is, so it sounds like we're saying Doug does not necessarily need each committee to meet once a month to take up the issues that he wants to put on the agenda. That's something that each committee member coordinates with Doug, or committee lead coordinates with Doug to figure out that cadence of how often he needs us to take those things up.
No, you don't have to meet every month. And the thing that I guess I'm trying to drive at is currently the committee chairs as of status quo old board had zero to do with the agenda items unless there was an emergency.
Right.
So there was really no Doug didn't need to talk to anybody on any committees. He didn't have it. You know, I'm speaking a little bit in generalities, but so the answer is no. We don't have to meet every month. I think that the review of the agenda is like I described. This goes out electronically to the board. They review the agenda. You have a period of time in which, like Anthony said, I mean, I don't mean to be a broken record, but this is accomplished in all of IU 17, like by many districts. And a lot of them mail them. You know, you get a packet in the mail. I'm okay with the electronic, but I'd rather not get a mailed package. But they get the agenda a couple weeks before the board meeting. They review it if they have any questions. But their committees are constantly rolling with proactive issues and concerns or opportunity. It doesn't always have to be an issue. So
yeah, absolutely. And I'm excited about that. I think I'm just trying to make sure that we are available to sign off on the things that Doug needs us to sign off on too, right? Like to keep that business going. So just seeking to understand that a little better, but I think I got it.
Yeah, I mean, I'll still be providing these discussion items, but then I would imagine that the chair of the committee would provide me saying, I want this put on, and then distribute the information that they would want to the other committee members, or the other members of the board, so that they would know what would be coming up in a board meeting for a motion.
Great, thank you.
And my last comment, and then we can move to Joe. I know this might not be perfect, so no one get concerned as we navigate through this. We'll learn, and some of the members have likely never really chaired a committee or something of that effect, so possibly. So it's totally okay. We can navigate it as needed and ask questions, and eventually I think we'll settle in with it.
Yeah. Hey, Gabe, I wanted to say in the folders this evening, I mean, this would, I guess, still be considered under finance. I included a legal services proposal from Sweet, Stevens, Katz, and Williams. I'm still expecting a few more this week to give the board. So I just wanted to ask if the board would take a look at that, and just that's the first of a few proposals. In the past, Sweet, Stevens, Katz has provided the district with attorneys for our special ed issues that we've had. And they're also the attorneys for a couple of the districts here in the northern tier.
Awesome. The other thing, and Doug, stop me if I'm wrong here, but I think based on because of it's a service.
Yeah,
The
it's
district is
professional
not,
service.
it's not forced to, like bid it out, go with best bid. So I think I'm not saying that we spend twice as much as we need to, but
Yeah.
we do have the freedom to pick the best fit for our district, not necessarily based it on financially low bid.
Yeah, this is essentially a process called RFP, which is a request for proposals. So, we'll get their proposals and then the board can review.
Good deal. Thanks. Joe. I can't see him, but I'm sure he's coming out of his skin.
First item, information, use of facilities requests from elementary PTO. Item 2 is other. I don't think we have anything else. Does anybody else have anything?
Well, I'd like to speak a little. Our gym floors are still not very well maintained. I coach the junior high boys, and they're slipping and sliding all over the place. I talked with the varsity coaches. They said the high school gym's not very well maintained. I think it needs to become a precedence. I mean, I can't even imagine how they do gym classes in there with the condition that they're in. So I think that's something that needs to be addressed and kept up on. It's got to be a daily thing pretty much at this point.
So that's one item. I have a couple for you, Joe. I'm just going to fire them off in
Go ahead.
an email format.
Yeah.
That way we can discuss them
Yeah.
in a committee meeting. So things like game.
Same thing. If you would send me an email, and then we'll get together and discuss them. Okay.
Yep.
If that's okay.
No, that's fine with me.
Okay. That's it.
All right. Athletics and health.
Did Chris have anything to say about that floor? Does anybody ask him what the problem is?
Yeah, we've talked about it the last meeting. There was discussion brought up by Mr. King and concerning that. So it's in my board report coming up, but I did train the teacher to operate our right-on scrubber and what you need to do before the floor is done with the machine. So that has been put in place. So from what I was told by him and Glenn both, that he would be doing the floors when we can't with that machine, which he did tonight. And the elementary gym floor was done also after 3 o'clock. So we're doing the floors, and then, prior to this, I was trying to do them in the morning also. But at that point, it really didn't do any good because the kids' activity in there during the day, it's not improving that situation from that point of view. So, I don't know other than, I did know and notify that we've been pretty well shorthanded on second shift, and that's become part of the issue. So, but again, that's being handled now, like on just weekends when there's, they come in into practice. We don't do that. We've never done the floors on weekends. So if he's here at that point, which he'd be coming with Glenn and them guys practice, he could possibly do that then if he so wished to do so.
Is that something that we could have an event staff worker do before the game?
We had also talked about these soccer coaches are responsible for lining their fields. The wrestling coaches are responsible for getting the mats clean. That's a piece of equipment. I think that's part of the concern. I know we've talked about the drag bar with the mop before practices, before games. There's no event staff here if it's a practice.
Right.
Well, that was one of my questions, was whether or not there was enough employees to actually do the stuff. Second, like, I don't know what the procedure is. Like, do they sweep the floor first and then put the machine on it?
The machine, it's always, we use a special dust mop that we have, don't use it for anything else but the gym floor. And that
I
gets
can
used.
speak to, I'm in the elementary gym almost every night, and I'm telling you right now, there's no dust mop ever put on that because there's stuff all over it all the time.
Okay, but is it, you're going in at what time?
3:30.
Okay, the gym's not always open to that point. So if we're not able to get there at 3:30, then yeah, there's nothing getting done with the floor beforehand. Now there are days that it is open at about 10 after 3 or so, but to gauge that and then have somebody be there to do that doesn't always work out very well because of what we have going in the rest of the school. So the elementary gym has probably been neglected more than it should be, but getting back in focus, I've been trying to stay up with that better and get back on track with it the best we can.
Yeah, Aaron, Chris and I had talked about being short-staffed, and there's just a lot to cover, and we plan on having a discussion with the staff to have some overtime for both first and second shift. First shift stay late, second shift come in early, and that would afford us a few more hours, and it wouldn't be like take your route and add an hour to it. It would be like we would have a list to accomplish in that hour that they would come in early. So like that would be a task that we could assign to say, clean the gym floor. So when they come in early, that would be that task, and it wouldn't be one of their normal tasks like when they get on their cleaning route. So that's something that Chris and I talked about last week, and we need to get that moving. But, at this point, we really haven't had too much overtime because we haven't had the staff. But now it's like we kind of have to make up time. So that's one of the things we have to look at.
From my standpoint as a coach, or a parent or wherever you want to say, it just, something needs to happen with it because it's a dangerous thing. My kids are falling all over the place, and I can't imagine. I mean, we have outside agencies using it with the youth basketball, and I know the varsity uses it, and it's something needs to be done with it.
Like I said, we are working towards that. Now I haven't heard anything from Glenn since they started doing the floors. I haven't heard anything about the floors being in bad shape. So going forward on that side, if it's at least a high school, I'm not saying the elementary.
Yeah, I saw Mr. Baldwin was riding the machine around. So,
yes.
So.
I mean, I think the coaches could help with that, although I never liked the idea. The wrestling coaches have to scrub the mats every day in the practice rooms, every day before practice.
I think I kind of picking up what some are saying here, and I think we can talk about on athletics and health, and that can come down to how much involvement our coach is going to be with preparation of facilities and working with buildings and grounds, and we can talk about that as a committee.
Yeah, because that would be good, because then the custodians could come in at the end of the school day and wash the wrestle mats.
Yeah, I know the baseball, softball, they line, but is it what we want to do? Do we want our coaches to focus on that or focus on coaching?
Well, I think they have the custodians doing it. It's just hard to get them to do it.
And we're short staffed, and I've seen the posting in the Sully for, 3 months now for trying to get help. So it's got to be a give and take relationship. So I think it's a great thing to bring up in our future committees.
All right. So, Anthony, I'll let you, unless somebody has something else on the buildings and ground aspect, Anthony, you can go ahead and move forward with athletics and health.
All right, so item 1 presented, addition to the list of approved game managers, and I believe it was only one. Is there any reason we can't enunciate who that game manager is during this committee meeting?
That's up to this board.
Well, wasn't there a reason why we didn't do that for that
Well-
and all hires?
Yeah, there's, when it comes to personnel issues and contracts, they're not really public until they're voted on. So in a meeting, you could have candidates that don't want to be discussed in public until a decision is made.
So I've gonna hold it off and we'll talk about it on
Okay.
next committee about that. But it's one of those things where if they're willing to apply and stuff, I think they should be willing to be
Yeah,
able to have
I
their
mean,
name out. But we won't do it tonight. So
yeah,
I would
and-
say,
Yeah, and there's two more that were included in your folder.
I,
And I believe the big letter, she wants to talk to the board or discuss with the board. So I'm not sure if you got that, Gabe.
If it was an addition that was in the folder, no.
Yeah.
it was in our email prior to this evening, correct?
No, this just came in today.
She sent an email to all of
Oh,
us though.
She did the, okay.
Yes.
Oh,
All right.
yeah. I wasn't sure what you were.
Yeah, so,
Yeah.
you know, I'll have her, you know, she can discuss in executive session at your next meeting prior to the meeting, Gabe, if that would be appropriate.
Yeah, that's fine. I think that, well, I don't know if you want to I mean, I'll let you navigate, Anthony, how you'd like, but I agree that just topic
I
of
don't,
future
I don't
discussion.
want to shock anybody this evening. And that's not the point. I think what we're trying to do. So I think it's just something that we can discuss as a committee next time we go around and go forward with a course of action. And the other one was the approval of volunteer coach for the varsity softball. And that person has all the necessary paperwork on file. I saw that was in our list, not on the agenda. Is that correct, Doug?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, that just came in today or yesterday.
Okay. So the next part of this is other, which I'm going to leave it up to some questions, concerns I can jot down. Like I said, I might not have answers. I may. Somebody else might tonight here. Crystal, you had some questions, some comments you want to make?
I did. I had a couple things that fall under this, I guess. So number one, and I had already discussed it with some of your committee members previously, but I wanted to look into why is our district requiring people to be 21 years of age or older in order to come in and help coach. We have some kids who graduated last year that have had their schedules change. So now they are going to be back locally and would like to help with our sports. And I understand that there's some concern for safety regarding if they were to wrestle with students or things like that. But I feel like a coach could monitor that. And I think we need to get these young people back in the district because as you can see, most of them are starting to age out and we're not going to have anyone to help soon.
Yeah, if you give me a minute to pull up the policy, I think it actually states something different. So, I mean, you can discuss something else. I'm looking at the policy right now.
Perfect. Well, it might be under that policy as well as to why we are giving teachers first dibs on these kind of coaching jobs.
Yeah, what Doug's looking, I think the age thing, I would tend to agree with, bringing some talent back to our district. I know there are, again, I'm involved in a couple different sessions with different sports outside of the district. And in some cases, their entire coaching staff are college kids that are literally right now either wrestling collegiately, playing baseball collegiately, and they're, high talent. There's some high talent.
Absolutely. And I know there's one child who is actually coaching 2 different sports outside of our district because we won't offer it to them.
Yeah, I'm sorry. When we were talking about this in another meeting, I looked it up. But I don't want to speak out of turn here, but I believe what our policy states is 18. I know that's maybe been contrary to what we've been doing, but that's what I'm searching for.
In the handbook, it's 21,
Yeah.
and they have to be out for 3 years.
Which makes no sense to me.
Especially considering all volunteer coaches aren't allowed to be alone with the kids anyway. They need to be supervised by a paid coach. So,
And they're going to go through all the proper paperwork anyhow.
Yeah, I think that's the key. I think the only concern that I have is just somebody coming back from college on winter break who's not vetted and they wrestle and somebody gets hurt. But if they're vetted and have gone through all the paperwork and requirements and we've approved them, it's kind of up to the coach for their volunteers on how they handle that stuff. So
They're not allowed to wrestle them anyway.
Yeah. We can't even have varsity wrestle junior high.
Yeah,
Well,
coaches can't. That's PIAA. That's nothing to do with the school district.
Doug, I think
Yeah.
it's not in a policy. I think it's in the coach's handbook,
Right.
like Joe
What
was
is it?
saying.
so why is it in the coach's handbook if it's not a policy?
It's previous handbook, so.
Yeah, maybe I'm looking at something else.
and these are the things I'd like to dive into. So as long as we can bring them up, we'll
sure.
talk about them in committees.
Okay.
And work with
And-
Lynn and
Yeah, we'll make
And the
sure.
athletic director would like to be part of that. We've had some discussions on that, so.
And how does the handbook qualify as far as like contracts and things like that go? Does
It's
that mean,
approved by us.
okay. So we would have to do a revision to the handbook if it ever got to that point.
we do review them once a year, I believe. Approve them for the upcoming year, things of that nature. But let's tackle them now instead of
Right.
right in August before school starts.
Right. Well, and I mean, I don't want to wait a year either if
I'm
we
with
could
you.
have talent in here now.
Sure.
I guess my other question will come back later too, about why the teachers are getting first dibs, even if they aren't qualified. That happened last year, and I didn't like it at all, and we need to look into that.
Well,
Yeah, we do it. We do an internal posting for 2 weeks. I'm curious on why that's always been the. No, that's great. I know I have some questions and concerns from another board member regarding the health aspect of athletics and health. Mary Elise.
Yeah, thanks, Anthony. So we've had some parents reach out to us with questions considering the recent surge in cases, both nationally and locally. I just looked up today that the county has had a 60% increase in COVID cases versus the last 7-day period. But we asked Doug to look into what have the school cases been this past week versus the week before break. And Doug, if I'm looking at the numbers right, they're basically flat. There's been no change,
Yeah.
which is good news.
Yeah, those are the cases that are reported to the Department of Health, and those are the ones that are close contacts and our nurse works through. So
they're coming from the Department of Health. It's not like the count of
no,
parents that call us. Oh,
yeah, it would be the parents that call us. What I'm required to do now, because we used to have to report each case, I report the cases in aggregate by Friday at 5:00 each week. So each week's cases are reported all together. So for each school. So those are the numbers that we have from the cases that we are reporting that are collected by our school nurse.
got it. So I just sent an email to y'all, and I'll kind of narrate over it in case y'all aren't able to see. I mean, basically, what I just wanted to ask this committee to consider and ask Doug and the administrators to consider is just to commit to some regular communication regarding case counts and some other data points. So I think there's 3 buckets here that I'd like to advocate for based on what families have shared with me, based on CDC, et cetera. So the first bucket is family communication, that we continue to do at least that weekly phone call with the case counts. People have said they appreciate that. The other thing I'd advocate for is an updated flow chart or FAQ of like what to do if your child or another member of the household tests positive, incorporating those quarantine requirements, who should be notified at school. I think there's not that like one-stop shop to go to when you're in that moment of like, oh, my kid just tested positive, or you know, what do I do? And I know I'm getting questions, and so it would be good to direct to like, hey, here's the one place where you can find that, both because it went home physically, but also on the website. Right now, the website still has a lot of the masking order information. I think that should come down now that it no longer applies, and let's get like that new information up there.
So what
yeah,
were the 3 things now with the call that ended when the Department of Health said they wanted written notification? I mean, so you want to call to, we haven't done that since September. So people want to call to go back out. Now, I had talked to a few parents.
I'm curious if what others have heard. That's what's been said to me, but I'm bringing this to the board to hear, like, you know, to hear what people think. Sorry, Doug, go ahead.
Yeah, like I said, these case counts are processed by our school nurse. They're investigated by our administrative staff or the close contacts. And those are the numbers that we're tracking. I have had a few discussions, and you know, there's always this anecdotal, well, there has to be more than that because I know of a dozen families that have, but we don't, you know, if there are, it's not reported to us, and those students are out of school. We are reporting every case that's reported to us, and then the close contacts are determined from those positive COVID cases. So those are the numbers that we're getting. So
yeah, and I think, like, to me, you know, I again, and Anthony, feel free to say, Mary Lee, stop talking, we'll take this up, but you know, I think getting that communication out there on that weekly basis to families, like, sends the message our school is safe, right? Because people are just hearing speculation or seeing the countywide numbers and not knowing necessarily what's going on at school. And so that's what I'm advocating for, is can we just get regular proactive communication about what the story is?
No, I think that's good stuff. We've heard the same thing.
Yep, I heard that.
Now there is one thing I want to bring up. There's a couple folks who have discussed with me some frustration on our close contact and how it's working, in the fact that they don't know how it works. And you know, I'll be honest with you, I'm a parent of that situation as well. You know, we had no questions. You know, was your kid in 3rd period at 7 o'clock in there in Science C? I never got asked that question because it could have been no. And if it was yes, then they were next to somebody. So I don't think anybody's looking to have a name or anything like that on who the person was that caused the close contact situation. But I think parents would feel a little bit more confident in our contact tracing program if they knew that some questions were asked. So I know, like busing, I think I heard somebody talk about their child's assigned seat was next to somebody who tested positive. Well, that student wasn't even on that bus that night. So it's things like that. I think those questions have to be asked to the parents before we send the kids home. I don't want to keep kids in school who have COVID by any means or being in close contact, but due diligence goes a long way for the education of the students. I think we have a lot of kids, and then Doug, I think you said last time, a lot of kids are missing education for close contact, and we have so many months of data. where close
Yeah.
contacts haven't test positive.
Well, see, and that's kind of where this changed, because we were under the old variant before when we made that change at the beginning of December. So we had quite a bit of information about the number of students that had that incidental school classroom close contact actually turning into a positive COVID case. And we could fall back and look and said it's not reflective. But this change when the CDC changed the isolation or the quarantine of a positive case from 10 days to 5 days, and then they also changed the isolation to 5 days, I thought it prudent that with the new Omicron variant that we collect our own data again, because we would be looking at a subset of positive cases to close contact from a variant that we didn't have before. So that's why I said we'd observe these numbers and keep track of them and see that where that really leads us. So
I
so
can
that-
walk you through an example of what
Yeah.
a close contact tracing looks like at the high school level. It takes time. It's very time consuming. So I nurse or I get a phone call from a parent who says my child tested positive. If it's a phone call to me, I report to the nurse. She says, do contact tracing. So we have seating charts for all our classes the students are in. They're in 9 different classes a day plus quiet study. So I look at the charts, write down the kids that are in close proximity. It's the same every time. And then I actually go around to each teacher and I said, is this seating chart correct on the day that the kid was last in school or whenever we're looking? We make adjustments all the time because they're working in groups, or we check attendance, see if they're present that day or not. And I am seeing a lot of kids that they sat next to that kid that was eye contact traced the day before. So, and like Doug said, it could be the new variant. But it is very time consuming and very thorough. I'm not sure the parent's going to know where the kid sat or who sat next to them. That's why we go to the teacher. And like I did one yesterday where the teacher's like, I wasn't here. I had a sub. So I had to figure out who the sub was, who was covering that class, and went and spoke to them.
So how does that work with like busing? So my
The
son,
busing, the nurse contacts the bus driver.
the bus driver's gonna know if that student was on there that day of the week? Like my son doesn't ride the bus Tuesdays or Thursdays because he comes to school early, but yet he was exposed on a Tuesday. I wasn't told if it was on the bus or in a classroom or where. So how do I know if it was because of someone on the bus and he wasn't even on the bus?
In my experience, Crystal, because I did a lot of that last year where I contacted the bus driver, the bus drivers are really good at saying like, I know that student wasn't on the bus that day because, whatever, I know for sure that student was on the bus. And if they aren't sure, then they're sure they tell us that. They say, you know what, you're asking me on Friday if the kid was on the bus on Tuesday, and I can't tell you for sure. And so then we can ask follow-up questions then. If the bus driver is not confident in their answer, then we ask follow-up questions.
Kudos to them.
I think that
Isn't there cameras on every bus?
No, there's not cameras on every bus.
Well, I think the missing link, and I know it's hard because everything's changing and it's difficult, but I think the missing link and the feedback that I have gotten is that the parents just kind of want to know. They don't need necessarily names, but there's just nothing. There's no like, hey, you were a close contact. Can you come get your child?
Right.
Oh, okay. Can you tell me more? I think what they're looking for is that I realize there's HIPAA situations and we don't have to, start having names and Post-it notes all over.
I don't think anybody's even asking.
But I think what people are actually looking for is, we just identified that your son or daughter was a close contact. Here's what happened through. I mean, the research is done because
Right.
so it shouldn't be that difficult because then that's Doug. It was one of my main concerns when we had talked about how we were going to implement this policy of, hey, let's try this for the next, until the board meeting on January is how we're going to effectively handle these things. And that was clarity on close contact. And then I don't want to overcomplicate this question, but the other question that I have is, it's a negative student in the same home as a positive student. And
Yes, see, this is where, we have to fall back with what the physician's recommendation is. And we're getting to the point in this pandemic that we have doctors that are on opposite ends of the spectrum within this same area. So we'll have a doctor in this county that will say quarantine 14 days, and that's something we haven't done for the last year. And then we'll have another one say you can go back tomorrow. So just like with our employees, if we have a return to work from a physician, we kind of have to follow the physician's requirement for those instances. So I know Jen is contacting physicians, or she's in contact with family doctors. She receives those notes, and I know the administrators see that. So that's the other variable that we're dealing with now that I don't think we really had just a couple months ago. This is
Well, I
something-
think, sorry to interrupt you, Doug, but I
Yeah.
think one of the big differences is last year we had to report every single case to the state. Like as when it happened, you do the contact tracing, and there was a big process for every single case. And then they would give you feedback on when each individual person that was sick and any close contacts when they could return. Like there's a pretty standard thing, and if you had a question because of as we know, there's a bajillion different variables that can happen. Well, this person lives with this person, or this, it gets very weird, but you could ask those questions and they would give you feedback on this is that person's return date. Well, our reporting has changed, and so that we're not getting that feedback like we used to. It used to be a lot more cut and dry, and it was a lot easier, I think, in my opinion, for both teachers and parents to understand, because it was a lot more concrete, and it was a lot more like I called the state and the state told me that this is when they can return. But that's not what's happening now, and we're trying to rely more on physicians, because like it's difficult for us who are not trained medical professionals to say when a person can return to work, but we're getting conflicting information from different doctors, so it's making it more difficult. And then families are rightfully upset because they're getting like, well, why is it this way in this case and this way and a different case? And it used to be I could say this is what it is because this is what the guideline is, but now it's not as straightforward.
the only difficulty I have with that, I get it, but Doug, the variance that you gave as far as, hey, you can come back tomorrow, you have to quarantine for 14 days.
Yeah.
To me, I think we should not necessarily just rely on the physician's aspect of return. I'm not saying disregard their credibility. They don't want to. It's not necessarily their job. They don't know the circumstances. So to me, it's like, if I can get my physician to tell you that my child should come back in a day, how does that make any sense? It's like, so it's more inconsistent than if we had a way that we handled it for ourselves, because it just doesn't even seem to make logical sense, really, because I don't know how it's making us any safer other than changing liability. I don't think it's doing anything for the spread of COVID. I don't know if that made sense, but it's like I'll just call my physician tonight and just tell him can you issue me a letter so my son can go back to school.
So that's kind of going back to the whole when you get a test result back. Also, some kids can get a result back the next day. Some kids aren't getting their result back for 4 days. So for 4 days, they were at school with other kids. Then they get the phone call that says, oh, now you're close contact, stay home. And it's only for one more day because they already had their 4 days. I mean, we're going to keep running into all of these ifs and whats because everything is changing daily.
Yeah, and that's what I explained to a couple of board members now that we're at the 5-day isolation, that the whole test to return that the Department of Health and CDC had been touting for a number of months that was just starting to be implemented is kind of void, because you were to wait 5 days, then test, and then you'd have to wait those couple days to get the test result. And now, well, that's 7 days. Now they're saying 5 days from return if you're asymptomatic or recovering. So that's where we are with that issue.
Yeah, I mean, I anticipate, right, that we're going to continue to, this is going to continue to change. We're going to continue to get like new guidance here, which is extremely difficult. Like this is not anyone's ideal situation. And I'm curious on the testing front, Doug. What
Yeah.
happened with the school testing program?
Well, we signed that contract with Ginkgo Biloba, which was the DOH vendor of choice from the state. And, you know, as with the other districts out here, I believe they overextended themselves. They were to be here the 10th of November, and we haven't seen them yet.
Jeez.
So that's where we are with that testing. But, you know, they may have had prior knowledge of the state, of the DOH, of what they were going to do with some of these guidelines and just said it doesn't make sense now. So I know there were a couple schools who did have their visit and they weren't impressed by the testing.
Got it.
So,
Yeah, I was looking at the guidance for test to stay, right? Which is the idea of like, if you get told you're a close contact, but you're asymptomatic and you agree to take the test and you test negative, that you would be able to stay in lieu of quarantine. But if we are not able, you know, if the company has not come through, then there we are.
yeah, and now with the 5 days, that would only be a matter of a couple days.
Right.
You know, like you may not know that you're a close contact till 3 days after. And then it would only be a matter of a couple days, and then you wouldn't have been tested by that point. So,
Gabe, we have some public people here. I don't know. I know they want to discuss this topic. Do we have to wait until at the end, or are they allowed to speak now?
I would say just have them, you know, raise their hand and state their name and let them speak. Yeah, if they're here.
Lance, how do we get it so that we can hear them?
I think he has a laptop and headset sitting on the tray.
Oh,
But while that's coming through, circle back way to the beginning here of this conversation. And Dr. Zawadi and Mrs. Eberlin, you guys were able to explain that to me in about 45 seconds. That was awesome.
Yeah.
And I think that's what some parents kind of want to be reassured. Yeah, I know you guys are doing it. I think parents just need to hear it. That way they feel that confirmation that, hey, thank you. Instead of, why is my kid this? Nobody gave me any information. They just sent him home. No answers. And
I agree. Thank you, guys. You are doing a lot of extra work, and it is greatly appreciated.
yeah, I
You're
can
welcome.
say sometimes their days are 75% close contact investigation. Even if it doesn't come up with anyone, they still have to check everything, every period.
Yeah. Hey, while we're waiting for Lance to get the computer set up or whatever's going on there, one thing, you know, I'll bring it up at policy as well, but I think to encourage the public participation, I definitely want to look into how we're going to navigate that. There's no law that restricts our public from speaking during these meetings. So I'm just going to say it out loud, and we might have to change some policy and do some voting and make some concessions, but we're not going to continue on in the future with getting a timer out and having somebody able to speak at the end of the meeting and limiting their speech till 3 minutes. That does not encourage participation and openness and, you know, transparency with the public. So I'm fine with whoever is there. And I think the board would probably agree that if you guys want to talk, let's have at it.
all right, we have somebody here.
All right. Cheyenne Wade. I think most people know who I am, wrestling coach, help out with the junior high. And then I got 2 kids in the district. The other day we got called for my little girl to get picked up, and they have like 5 kids now left in her class. Like, I guess my question is, we went from being masked for a close contact to nothing, and I get the state authorizes it or gives you guys direction to go by, but I don't understand why we can't just mask those kids, even though I'm not a mask fan, and leave it to the option of the parents knowing that there was a close contact to decide that, and not a school district or the state per se. I know there was a kid that got pulled out on a Friday at 3:15 and was not allowed to wrestle on Saturday, but if it would have been Sunday, would have been legal to wrestle. But I don't understand how that can be right.
So your question is we reverted from masking quarantine in school to now unvaxxed quarantine at home.
Yeah,
That was.
But even with the, like, I'm glad you said the unvax, but the vaccine people still get it. And they also still spread it. You know, I know there's people that have gotten it that I know that have a vaccine, and while they're in the school, wear a mask. But yet still got it. So I don't see the difference in the vaccine.
Well, you know, that new guidance also allows those who have been COVID positive but unvaccinated to be the natural immunity is now considered vaccine or having the vaccine.
Okay, now this leads into the other side of it. Okay, some people don't show symptoms or don't get tested or whatever it might be for whatever reason. I'm going to use myself. So if I went down to my doctor, paid for the blood test, they said you had it, I'm considered vaccinated, good to go.
No, not vaccinated, asymptomatic.
Asymptomatic.
Yeah.
So I could have the
But
same
you
immunity stuff as the vaccinated people.
Yeah, that's what we're talking
Or
about.
my son or daughter or
Actually,
Yeah,
it would be
that-
better. It would
Yeah,
be
that's-
better than the vaccinated because the studies that they have out that have been proven worldwide show that there's a 27% higher, like a better for natural immunity as opposed to the vaccine itself. So
Yeah, that's
I've seen
actually
studies
included
that,
in the
that
new.
completely dispute that. So I don't think we
So-
should
so
debate
I-
about
I
that kind of stuff
don't-
unless we
don't
have
wanna-
it
No,
in
I
plan.
just want to know the rules on it.
Most
Like
comprehensive
if I
study
go
in the
get
world.
tested as a coach and I get close contacted, I can be considered not vaccinated, but whatever the blood test would allow me to be.
Yeah, and I don't want to go too off in the weeds. None of us here are doctors, but
Yeah.
medical doctors. Sorry.
Right.
But I want to say the reasons we did the change before. So I brought up the item that we're discussing now, and I kind of agree with why we did it. I wasn't a fan of it, but I think what Mary Lisa's saying and what Doug is saying is where this whole thing happened. So Mary Lisa's looking at like national, state level information, like our numbers are through the roof. Doug's collecting local data, and our local data is the same as it was prior to Omicron being the biggest thing since sliced bread for coronavirus, for COVID-19. So I think this little round of what was going on was a mixture of like the nation is seeing a big surge, but our local data hasn't changed.
Yeah,
And I
we're
think
not
The
getting
local school data, Anthony.
Yeah,
The
the local
county is
schools,
up 60% since last week.
our local school data has not changed at all.
Yeah, so that's why, like before, when we just did the close contact, but they could attend mask, it was before the Omicron. And that's what we were saying. We had all those months of school data that were showing that like I said, that incidental classroom close contact wasn't leading to an increase in positive COVID cases in the school. So we had something to base that on. But now with this new surge, with this Omicron surge, that data doesn't really reflect that because that was from the prior variant that was coming through. So that's why now we're collecting this data so we can reflect and say, any of those that have been like last week, what did I say, 38?
38.
38 close contacts. We're going to be looking back at those next week to see if any of those are reflected in the positive COVID cases that are reported. So then we can say, these were the close contacts, and this is the percentage of those close contacts that were identified by us that have turned positive. So then we would have our own local data to look at, but after just a week, we really can't determine that. We just know the aggregate numbers are one off of what they were the week before Christmas break for each of the schools.
Right.
Then, like,
But we don't know that, you know, what the, I'll say it for lack of a better term, the conversion rate from close contact to COVID
right
positive.
now, what is the difference, like, in our school versus close contact out versus actually kids that have it?
Well,
Oh,
Well,
it's
we've got-
huge. I think it was
Yeah.
5.
yeah. Last week, 6 positive, 38 close contact in the high school. Elementary, 1 positive, 5 close contact.
Okay,
So it's a total of 7 and 43.
okay. Now, my daughter's class is down, I think, 5 kids in it from 21.
What day was that?
So I will also say I encourage all parents, if your kids are sick, keep them home. So whether they have COVID or not, I don't know the answer to this.
Yeah.
But if my kid had a cough, keep them home. Like you know, but
Yeah,
I don't want to
And there
scare
may
it too much.
Cheyenne, people that are home that were close contacts from things outside of school that we, you know, the kid's not in school, but it's because they went to visit their family and, you know, something like that. Or they're sick. I mean, it's wintertime. They could be sick with any number of other things too. So there are definitely classes that have like 5 kids in it. But that doesn't mean that all that are absent or because of close contacts or because of close contacts in the school. If that makes
Because we're looking for that too. We're looking for clusters. And right now, they're scattered all around. You know what I mean? Like if we had every one of, you know, like if we had like 10 COVID positives within like one period of one class, then we would have a cluster. We'd have an issue then. But we're not seeing that. We're seeing it scattered around.
it's not spreading like they're saying.
In our local school district.
In our local
In
school
our local,
district.
but
Right.
but we have, we're fortunate here in that we can actually spread our students out a little bit, and it's also some of the mitigation. We still continue to spray the hallways. We still continue to wipe things down and disinfect.
Doug, can you
know,
talk
we're-
about the ventilation system that you like? I think that's a huge deal, and I don't know if people know about that.
just for like the air ventilation, what
Yeah.
Chris and I had discussed. See, in the school, we don't have big air handlers that are handling a bunch of rooms. All of our classrooms have univents on the outside walls. So they're actually heating and exchanging air in each of the separate classrooms. So we don't have this combined air through one central duct that goes through a filter and then it goes to all the schools. So we're not, you know, our air is constantly being exchanged. And at the beginning of the year, I had asked Chris, you know, we've got the biomass plant down there. We can burn a few more wood chips, right? I said, what if we turn the temperature up in the system, circulate hotter water through the system, like instead of 180, go to 190, and then the damper angles can be adjusted so you're drawing more fresh air across a hotter exchange and keeping the temperature consistent in the school so we can have more exchange of air. So we're trying and thinking of all those things just to get the exchange of air increased in the classroom. But that helps us too, being all on one floor, that we have those univents and we don't have some big, huge HVAC system.
Yeah, and a lot of people know, like, I know a lot of you guys know, my main concern is like that kid that happened this past weekend. You come the end of this season for wrestling, you can actually determine whether somebody may have a college look at them by just one close contact. Whether it's wrestling, basketball, I don't know that it affects as much because
Oh, we've had horrible effects, you know, at Penn
God
State.
bless my whole basketball team.
Yeah, Penn State
Right,
has
You know,
had
close
that.
contact. So it's not
Yeah.
that the
Hal can probably speak to this. I mean, because he keeps up with wrestling, PIAA. But
and-
there were kids that were truly affected
Last year.
season
Mhm.
by that.
And that's what I was just trying to figure out is so we can get to a system that is a direct deal where if just as simple as wearing a mask, like right now I emailed all the teachers to keep my son off to the side. I'm telling him he's got to wear his mask in school as a parent.
And I know I had one teacher said, put him to the back of the room, and somebody asked him, he said, my dad says.
Yep, exactly. And, you know, and I'm not real shy about it, and he's not happy about it, but you know, that I'm hoping that is what will be able to keep him in and keep him away from it.
Yeah.
And he's eating by himself and stuff like that too.
Yeah, I mean that, you know, I would hope by this point in the season, our coaches are telling their students, you know, keep your distance, you know, keep that social distance, wash your hands, you know, wear a mask, you know, that kind of thing.
But see, this is the other side. Like earlier, if you had a mask on, you were considered good. But now the way I understood it, if my son's wearing a mask and his buddy's not, the mask means nothing and you still have to be quarantined for 5 days.
Yeah, that's the way.
And to me, that's, if these masks are so great,
Well,
you know, everybody says wear a mask and it'll end.
nothing's ever perfect.
Oh, I know.
And you can't count on just one thing to be perfect. And we can't tell you just one thing is going to be right for this whole thing.
Right, just to have a set standard though and not changing. Make one through our school, not one that's built for the cities. We are not a city.
And
Well,
I think
well,
that's,
that's
why
what we're doing. That's
why we're
what
collecting the
trying to
data.
do.
This is what I was
That's
gonna say. The local data our school collects is what we should go by, not by Danville going virtual. You know,
Yep.
Danville's a totally different system. Now I know other areas around us are seeing spikes. We're not.
Well,
Right
I think
now. And
the other
maybe in
thing-
another week.
I think the other thing too, Cheyenne, is that hear you loud and clear. The one thing that Doug had asked to do when we implemented the 5-day deal was to allow the district to get additional data on the new strain. Essentially, Doug, if I'm getting this wrong, let me know. But so that change in policy ultimately was tying back to the 5-day recommendation, and then the goal was, well, an example is this. You know, when they eliminated the temperature taking, right? So that was done on data points. So I know that's kind of old news now because everything's changing every week. But when Doug came and presented to the district and said, look, like this is ridiculous that we're doing temperatures every day. It has no effect and I've got the data to prove it. I think the goal is by next regular meeting, which is next Tuesday, is to have an evaluation of the data collected on the effects of essentially the Omicron part of this, to say, okay, now we know the following. So I think it's going to continuously change, but totally hear what you're saying.
Yeah. All right. I don't want to keep beating the same horse with it, but just so we come to a conclusion and don't compare ourselves to a center city Philadelphia, because we definitely are not. They make them up here on the weekends, but they go home.
Yeah.
So
Sorry, your
get-
time's up. You're going to have to stop
Yeah.
talking now. No, just kidding. Just joking.
Well,
Yeah.
one thing I wanted to mention on that front is that I've heard of districts appointing is like advisory groups of medical professionals to help make these decisions. Like that's what we're stuck in right now, right? Is that we have the CDC guidance that is for everyone, and none of us are epidemiologists or virologists or any of these things, and so we really have to look at that guidance. But I know that there are districts that have appointed local advisory committees to help make sense of that and look at the data and do that. That just might be something we consider down the line.
Well, yeah, we actually looked at that probably last year. The issue is any advisory group that any of the medical centers would designate are coming from urban areas.
yes.
So then our local direction would be guided by what the urban areas are doing. So it would be Geisinger, Danville, it would be Evangelical and Williamsport. You know what I mean? It would be those groups that are appointed by those healthcare systems.
Would that change once, you know, we hopefully someday get somebody in the medical center in LaPorte?
Yeah, but
Wishful.
even with doctors, like you get too much of their own opinion. They don't necessarily they don't go by the data. They go by the little bit of data that they deal with in their office
Yeah.
versus, and they get their own opinion, not
And I think that's what Doug was
charts and
saying.
stuff
Some
also.
are saying quarantine 14, some are saying go back tomorrow. So
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say, or
agree.
even
That's a good way
sometimes,
to look into a couple of people. Yeah.
like sometimes we'll see with medical journals, they don't want to give you advice because they don't want to, they're super wishy-washy and don't want to commit to something that like you're asking them for advice and they're like, well, I can't really tell you, and you're like, but you can't tell us, then who's going to tell us? So.
Right. It's a bad position to be put in. I mean, I would hope that if we were able, again, if we only have one provider in the county, that doesn't really help. But having a couple different people who have different, approaches to the data, I think would be helpful. So you could get those multiple perspectives. But anyway, I won't argue that anymore.
I just wanted to add one more thing. Cheyenne was talking about the blood test there. You need to have a positive test on file somewhere to have that start date for the antigens to even be considered. For example, my daughter had it in June. She knew she had it in June. She didn't go to the doctor. It was one day. She was better the next day. I got it. I was sick for 2 weeks. But she went to college. They said bring an antigen test or get a negative test done that day. She went to the doctor, got an antigen test, but because she was never tested, I took that paper to the college and they were looking at it as she was positive that day. So if you're gonna use the antigen anywhere, you need to make sure there's a positive test on file for the 90 days to even be considered, or people will freak out. So just a thought.
any other public? Okay. Hey, thanks, Shane.
I do have another ask. Athletes returning from COVID.
What's your question, concern?
Well, somebody informed me that they have to have at least one practice before they can return to competition, which I've never heard of.
Yeah, I've not heard of that either.
All right. I will,
That might have come the trainer because there were some issues with kids with underlying conditions, but I haven't heard that was policy, but I can look into it.
Okay.
So
I could understand if there was underlying conditions, but most kids are pretty healthy, even if they're returning from COVID, they're pretty healthy. And to sit there and say, oh, you can't participate in an activity until you have X amount of practices, to me is sort of, I don't know.
So you had a student ask you that or say that to you, an athlete?
Actually, my assistant
Whose
coach said it to me.
jurisdiction is that?
I would say the athletic director. She should know.
Or the athletic
Yeah,
director.
well,
Might
that's
be
what I'm
something
asking.
coming from the
Is it
trainer.
the trainer or is it the nurse or is it the athletic director?
I have to look into that because I'm not sure.
Okay, because
I would
You
say
know.
what we need to do is fire an email off and then get that information to our coaches immediately. That way the coaches know on who can play, who can't play, because they're going to be the ones that will inform the student whether they have to attend practice or make a game. That make sense?
So was your question, your student returns Wednesday, they have a game Thursday, are they allowed to play?
Yeah, essentially. And it's not a matter, I mean, nobody seems to know the answer. So if it's not a policy, I'd like to know
well,
if somebody,
it could be coming from, like I said, either nurse or the trainer. You know what I'm saying?
shouldn't it be left up to the parents at that point then?
If it's a policy of the, if it would be a policy, it'd be the athletic director.
Okay, that's what we need to
Okay,
find out.
that's what we want to find out.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. If we know where it's coming from,
Okay.
then we can figure out how to, handle it.
Right, because I think a coach should be notified when their students are allowed to play
You know?
again.
Just
Yeah,
like
like
with an injury
Right.
coming back. You know what I'm saying?
I understand all that. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
okay.
and that's fine. But that's why I brought it up, because I want to know
Mhm.
what the answer is, because I was informed of it. And I'm like, well, that's not consistent with what
I think
I've been seeing in
fire
other
off.
sports. So,
Yeah, like I said, we'll find out where it's coming from first, then we'll make the adjustments. Okay?
I'll fire off a quick email, and that way the coaches are informed as soon as possible.
That's an easy answer to find.
Anthony,
The
did you
only
say
other-
you're gonna send an email?
Yeah, or I can, or you can. I mean, if you're
No,
volunteering, buddy.
Nope, just clarifying your statement.
Yeah, no, email's quick and easy, and then I'll let those respond, and then they can inform coaches on the necessary steps on return from COVID.
The only other thing that I would have on health and athletics would be that, and I don't even know if this falls under you or buildings and grounds, but the camera in the gym. Is there any way we can set up a program? I mean, we do have an AV club in this school, don't we?
Mm-hmm.
Now, would it be possible to see if any students would be interested in actually running the camera? Maybe some of the students would be interested in, like, I don't say they're pursuing a broadcasting career, but as sort of getting their feet wet in a broadcasting career of sitting and actually commentating on whether it's the wrestling matches or whether it's on the games and going over it and as sort of an educational experience.
So you're talking about broadcasting as well as the live.
Yeah, because I mean, my dad can't go anywhere, so he has to watch everything at home. In the one whole quarter, just the camera just sat there, and he's like, I can't watch any of the games.
A lot of schools do that with their football programs.
Like
You'll have somebody up in
a
the booth.
media class or
I know the AV club is, but we can reach out and see if anybody's interested.
Yeah, and
Well, I know last winter I went down to Hughesville, and well, we went down there, but I watched the games online, and they had 2 kids running it, and they did a fantastic job. Like, it's like they did their research on the players. They knew the players on both teams, and they were talking, and they did a great job at just
when the
being like
whole
broadcasters.
COVID, when the schools were all virtual and stuff, and they had games. I was watching my granddaughter's basketball, and a couple of schools even had teachers doing the broadcast.
Renova has baseball do it. Renova does it for baseball.
I think we'll start out. I don't want to overrule anybody in any way, shape, or form, but I think we'll start out. If you have any volunteers from the AV club or any other club that'd be interested.
Things we run into at Sullivan County is we have involved in everything.
Yeah.
That tends to be a problem as well. But we can look into it.
Cool.
yeah, I had asked for updates to that equipment as well, but that was
What
something
do you mean by
that,
update?
to the camera itself. That's not really purposed for what that is. We just had that equipment to actually get equipment that they have for gyms that will actually electronically follow the action of the game.
Oh, you mean like South Williamsports?
Yeah.
Because that's what I had brought to the administration last year. I said, boy, that would be great, and they said, oh, that's what we got on order. And then we got this thing, and I'm like, it's not quite there.
Yeah.
So it's very...
This was actually equipment that had on hand. So we've discussed looking into better equipment for future. Not something that could happen necessarily this season, but for the future.
So,
With shipping delays and
so the one the last administration was talking about must still be on back order.
Yeah.
So Aaron, I'm gonna jot that down as a equipment upgrade. All right, boss.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other
Well,
comments?
I know the business manager could tell you that there's money in the fund reserve for that. So.
yes, talk to that if the business manager says it's available.
We'll double check with him before the end of the week.
All right.
Anthony, I do have just one more question, if it's all right.
Fire away.
Doug, just confirm, this is what I believe you've said before, and again, we've gotten questions about it this week, and the Department of Health is who would trigger or signal us that we would need to go virtual, and that would be based on the weekly reports that you give them of cases, correct?
Yeah, it's actually a rolling 14-day average. So like it would be this Wednesday and then 2 Wednesdays from now, you know what I mean? That just rolls. So we're looking at today and then we would back up for 2 weeks. So it would be that average per building. And I provided that. Now they say those they give recommendations and guidance, but they said closures and virtual instruction are a local decision. So if you go to the PD website and you look at that and information I provided to the board tonight, I copied and pasted right off the website. And I asked for clarification of the numbers. And they said that we would follow the small school, less than 500 staff and students, 25K threshold
Thank you.
per building.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, thank you. That's it. Thanks, Anthony, and thank you, committee.
Okay, all right. Wraps up. Over to slide 2.
We going to curriculum now?
Yep.
Okay.
I think I did have it up on the screen too. I think
Yeah,
you
it's
guys
still there.
can- Cool. All right.
All right, item number 1 is information, donation of a flute to the elementary music program by Janelle Day. Thank you, Janelle. It's exciting to hear. Heather, Aaron, any questions or comments?
No, not on that.
Not on that.
Great. And then number 2, venture grant received from the First Community Foundation Partnership in the amount of $8,000 for the instrumental music program advancement for students in grades K through 12. That's super exciting. I was really excited to see this on here. And it sounded like from reading that we can use it to acquire instruments or pretty much any type of different equipment. So that's really exciting. Doug, any more you wanted to say, or Heather, Aaron, any questions or comments?
Auto. I had tasked them with this before Christmas, and I know Lynn had worked with them. And what they want to do, we have quite a number of instruments that are in need of repair to gain function, as well as purchasing new instruments so that we can distribute them to students so that we can start an instrumental program for essentially students who may not be able to participate otherwise because of cost of instruments or lessons, and start that program. And then that would be the feeder to the high school, and we could start developing a program outside the curriculum area, but actually, a personal instrument choice.
That's
So,
awesome.
Yep. And the last grant we had from this, if you remember, we had an artist in residence that had the project for the high school cafeteria. So this is the same organization.
Great.
And they look for projects that are within the arts that wouldn't necessarily be funded through our normal budget because it's not part of curriculum, but it's like an add-on an add-on piece that they're looking for us to provide.
Just one piece to that. I know I'm going to speak for a lot of parents, and hopefully I don't upset any parents, is if we could upgrade from the recorder, that would be phenomenal.
Don't you know that's a worldwide requirement, Anthony, that you learned?
I have solved so many life problems with a quick 2 of 3 blind mice. I just can't count them all. So anyway, I think it's great that we do the recorder program, but if that would be great if we could upgrade that. So I challenge them.
Imagine an entire class in the cafeteria with recorders.
Yeah,
That's
so
what- the kids love it. They really do.
You only hear 1 or 2 at home, but we have the pleasure of hearing the whole group call at once. I always know it's recorder season because I take a bank deposit of 1s and quarters to the bank for the purchase of recorders.
So I'm glad I got the response I did with that comment. So thank you.
Great. And then our last item is other. I have one thing, but I'll pause and Heather, Aaron, if y'all have anything you want to add first.
Well, I do have a couple things. I'm sorry. You have something, Heather? Oh, I don't know if this falls under the curriculum. I was just asking Joe this, or if it's under athletics and health. But like our senior high band uniforms. Like, is there a reason they don't have uniforms other than a polo? That's just a question I have. Because I know years ago when my eldest son performed in it, we went to some tri-county band thing, and our kids are out there in shorts and t-shirts while every other school has an actual band uniform.
That would be up to this board.
Were you able to catch all that, Mary Elise? Did you?
Yeah, I wrote it down. Yeah.
Well, you could just write it down as band uniforms. But and then my second one was, is it possible for us as a board to get a weekly update on failing students in the district? because as a coach, I get a athletic eligibility list, and I'm really quite alarmed at the number of students on that. And I know that the criteria for being athletically ineligible is pretty weak. So there's probably a good bit more kids that are failing at least one class, and I would like to be updated on that on a weekly basis.
The athletic director, if you go and ask her, she'll give you that. At least the athletic director used to give the coaches.
Well, I think it's something that the entire board probably ought to look
Right.
at, you know, if they could send an email out, because I know last year at this exact time, you know, I had contacted, I believe it was Gabe, about the fact that there was almost 100 kids on it. And that was just on the sports and eligibility report, which to me is ridiculous. So, I mean, it's not that high right now, but I mean, I don't know how many it is for kids failing at least one subject, because we need to start looking at the academics here and stop worrying so much about the common cold.
Yeah, and please, if you're looking at last year's or this year's, put it in the context of what it was.
It's way
just
better,
a-
I know, but that's
a
because
number
we're
of
in
years
person and
ago.
not virtual.
Yeah, we've got
So-
to walk our way out of this, so.
Yeah. Well, I think, go ahead, Doug, I'm sorry.
I would just remind the board that that would be highly confidential because it would be student information.
Oh, yeah.
So it would be for the purpose that you have designated, which is just to maintain track of our performance as a district.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'd ask that you'd work with the administrators for just what you need, you know, not additional information.
Well, one thing I jotted down when we were talking about committees earlier is that I think I know for this committee in particular, we should sit down and think about the data points that we should be looking at regularly. And I think that is probably one of them. So I think I would encourage, if, you know, any board member, if you're not on this committee, if you have an academic data point that you're really interested in, please send it to me, because I'm going to work on compiling that before next month.
Yeah, Mary, at least you kind of took the words out of my mouth. I was going to suggest, not necessarily from other in regards to proposed agenda, but just for future like discussion topics for your committee. I think we were that example, I guess, but when Dr. Higley was hired as superintendent, we were sort of on a track to look at baseline data numbers. And I don't know if I even know all the sets that we wanted to look at, but I think that visibility in that and an understanding of that would be really valuable, because we used to get like the once a year crash course, and Ed Petrosky would come in and he would give the high school data numbers like once a year, and we'd talk about it for 8 minutes, and then it would vanish in thin air and we'd move along. I don't necessarily think it's the goal, I don't think, would be to point fingers at anyone. I think the goal would be to show the advancement of our new administration and some of the things that we're going to implement and put in place, because the last 12 or 15 or I guess 20 some months has been challenging at best. So yeah, I definitely would like to see us put together some type of, because I think the other thing, and I can't help myself here, that we have to actually, I want to encourage the public on this, is there's a lot of Facebook chatter, all right? I don't really get involved in it. And I think that I'd like to encourage people that if you want to have those discussions, do like Cheyenne Wade did and come to the meeting, have a conversation, get it on the agenda so we can talk about it, versus creating a sort of a Facebook buzz. And in some cases, you know, the data points aren't always accurate as well. So I'm not saying don't use Facebook, but I think when people use terms like everybody and always, you know, I think we need to define that. Does everybody mean 3 people, or does it really mean everybody?
Yeah.
I think it's
Gabe?
really,
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I think it's really important to use actual like parent comments to focus our attention in certain areas as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, Gabe, I just wanted to interject that I'll throw a silver lining on this. We have brand new administrators. They've developed no bad habits to this point. So they, when we're looking at this test data, they don't have any what we used to do as part of their toolkit, because all they're using is what we're going to do. So when you were saying about that 8-minute review of the metrics of some set of data points from PSSA or Keystones, they're looking at it with fresh fresh lenses. So I think, so recently coming out of the classroom where they're, I think their perspective is going to be different with that. They're not looking at it as how it used to be context before COVID. We're walking a way out of this. So I think we can really develop within this next comp plan. And I just wanted to interject, Megan Behensky's here. She has a graduate program or a doctoral program that she's in, and she'll be involved in the comp plan. She's highly invested.
Awesome.
In this district, and she'll be able to help us with a lot of those special areas. So we've got some good people lined up, and like I said, we don't have or we haven't developed those bad habits yet. So I think that'll work out for us.
Awesome. Well, I was just a quick follow-up. This was my other thing that I had added here. I think we took 4 sites again in November. Maybe it was December. And so I was hoping that maybe in the administrative reports that come next week, we could get some high-level results there, a summary of what we're doing with the data. I'm just curious where that landed. I know that happened recently.
They're all writing down notes, Mary Elise.
Anthony, thanks for being my eyes in the room. Heather, Aaron, I don't know if we got your whole list.
I was muted. Sorry. No, that's all I had. I just was sort of wondering about that.
Yeah, those are good questions. Heather?
I was kind of on the same track with Aaron, looking at what we need to focus on for curriculum.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious with the comp plan, but I know one thing we've been talking about with the comprehensive plan, Heather, you mentioned parent comments, like, to what extent are we surveying the community and learning more from parents about what their concerns are? And that can definitely drive the business that we do as well. So thank you, lots to think about. I think that's it for curriculum, unless anyone else outside the committee had anything. Great, thank you.
Good deal. All right, we'll move on to, what are we moving to? Personnel. Crystal?
Yep, we have 3 things on the agenda. A letter of retirement from a professional employee. Any questions about that one? Okay. Number 2, discussion of daily substitute rates for professional support employees. Currently, it's $110 for professionals and $9 an hour for paraprofessionals. I guess it's $110 a day for professionals and $9 an hour for paraprofessionals.
Yeah, these rates, that's $110 a day. That was established. Boy, it's been $100 for at least 15 or 110 since we've been with Source for Teachers. We used to have first 20 days was $100, and then after 20 days it was 120. When we went with Source for Teachers, we just split the difference, made it 110. Up until recently, we were probably in like about the 75 percentile, but now everyone's in a crush looking for substitutes. And we have our heavy hitters here for substitutes within the county, but we're actually pulling in a few, from Muncie and from Towanda area. And we have a concern within our teachers, the amount of coverage they're doing because of, again, COVID. But this rate really hasn't kept up with inflation over the years. Like I said, I think it It's almost been that rate since I've been here. And I think probably a rate of 140 would make us competitive. And
So-
with the,
I think it was that rate when I was in college, and that was like 20 years ago.
that's,
So
yeah, that's how long. Yeah. And for the support, it's currently 9. And I think it probably should be about 12, which would put it 51 cents under the contract. And then on June 1st, it would be $1.01 under the contract for the first year starting. So it would still be under our current contract with the support staff. So
you're the business manager and you're recommending that we should do 140.
140.
So how many hours are we saying that they work a day?
Well, it would be the entire day. It's the 7 hours and 25 minutes.
Okay.
Except they're not guaranteed a prep. Or, so we, yeah, lunch, yeah. So,
No, I was just trying to figure out like
Yeah.
a dollar amount for an hourly rate.
yeah. But that would put us at a pretty good rate, and that would make us very marketable up here. And to me, that's the low hanging fruit. When you start talking about trying to get coverage for students or teachers in classrooms, that's one of the things we can do in order to try to attract more people here. So that would be our first step when we're looking at that.
maybe you ought to try that with the janitor position.
Yeah.
I mean, no. I mean, we giggle, but it's a good point. It's been
Oh, in
posted for how long
seriousness.
now?
Well, I don't know
So-
how we're getting anybody to work for $9 an hour.
That was
That's
my next thing. So,
insane.
man of many
Especially
hats.
when McDonald's is paying 15.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so what were your suggestion for the?
140.
For 140 per
Yep,
day.
I got that one.
And then $12 per hour.
Sorry, I got booted.
It's 'cause we don't like you.
I can take it. I'm used to it.
So do we need to make a motion like next meeting and all that?
Yeah. Yep. So if you're
Okay.
fine with that, that's what I'll put on the motion.
Where'd we
I
land?
am 140 and $12.
I think we're gonna make the people we pay $12 an hour now for every day not very happy when they see the substitutes are getting the same amount of money.
How often are those evaluated?
As often as the board would
The
like.
contract.
So what's your recommendation, Hal?
I don't know a recommendation, but I mean, the people that's coming in every day for us now, we're paying them $12 and change an hour, and then we're gonna say substitutes get the same. Then we shouldn't make the 110 for professionals. We should make it 250 or 300 like the teachers get.
But they're also getting benefits.
Yeah, but I'm just saying they just look at their hourly wage and that contract's
Well,
not coming up anytime soon.
I would
but what-
encourage you to reach out to us.
Well, I think we took great strides the last 2 contracts with the support staff to try to realign those wages, though. I mean, they were significantly lower. We had a number of years where it was $1 an hour each year that we were increasing it just to make it marketable. And we're still behind the market curve. So next year, that contract goes into negotiation. I mean, I don't, we're trying to, I mean, the bottom rate is, I believe, $12.51. So it's still a half a dollar less than that contract. But, that's what the contract is.
And I would think, Doug, that our support staff would be appreciative of the extra help because right now that when we're not getting the substitutes, we're asking our support staff to be pulled in a lot of different directions and cover for their colleagues when they're out. And although I do see your point with the actual dollar amount that you're talking about, I think people are really going to appreciate the extra help if we can get the extra help in here.
But I mean, they have a benefits package that's quite
Right.
extensive.
Exactly.
You know, so they're making far more than $12.51 per hour.
Yeah, but they don't look at that when they look at your paycheck. That's all I'm saying. It just,
Yeah.
you know, you're just,
And
I think that,
especially
that'll
when
have to
it's
be
12,
explained
even
when
if
it
it was
comes
in
out.
something under that.
Yeah.
When it's
As
12,
an
it's
HR
what they're getting, you know.
As an HR person, I know I do yearly a compensation letter for each of my employees, and I outline what their benefits are, and I put a dollar amount on that.
Mm.
And then
Mhm.
they can see, you know, they get 10 days off, it's this much money, you know, and then they get that yearly compensation amount to show them, even though they only make so much an hour, this is what they make at the end of the year.
Correct. Okay, anything else?
Are you thinking making that amount less than the person that's the full-time person that's in there now?
It is
It is
less.
less.
What is the?
1251 is the smallest.
It is 1251.
Okay.
I can look that up quick just to make sure. But I thought that's what I had.
Well, while he's looking that up, I did have sort of a question. And this has to do with the quarantine students. I know I've heard it before that teachers are supposed to be reaching out to them. Oh, okay. Because I've had 3 kids quarantined, and I don't know if any teachers reached out to them.
It might be by email.
They might just post stuff online for like the general purpose of everybody, but they don't reach out to my kids.
Not
They
by
didn't-
email
they
either.
They didn't in the fall, and they haven't here in the last couple of days, at least according to my kids. You know,
Are
I
they
asked
check-
them, I said, I want to know
Right.
if they reach out to you, and they said, no, they
Okay.
haven't reached out. So,
You might want to look over their shoulder
Well,
when they're getting their email.
I trust my kids pretty good, because if I were to find them to be lying, they know they'd be in trouble, so. I don't worry about my kids lying to me.
Sometimes kids forget about email and it's used often
Oh.
by teachers.
I know, but
I'll check on it.
my wife is very, very diligent on it, and she doesn't let them forget. So she asks them regularly. So,
All right, almost there.
Did the information item for the tenure, was that going to be on here? I know that just came to us in this packet as well.
Yeah, we were going to add that. That
I
was
have
also included in the folder there.
Yep. I
There are
have
2
it.
names added. Yeah.
So are we allowed to say these names? Or we're not saying names?
I really think going forward out of our committees, I'm going to make that statement, like your names are going to be announced if you applied or things like that. But
I mean,
just chose
tenure,
tonight
they've
for
been
that.
here for what, 3 years?
I agree. I think it's so silly.
But the
Yeah, it is.
tenure part name's not a big deal, but sometimes when you're hiring an employee, where they're leaving may not know yet.
I think that's a totally different beast right there. I'm talking like coaches who applied and things like that. Not when it comes down to a job.
And I think the next thing is if you applied to our district and you don't want your name out there because your current employer, then do you really want to be in our district?
I think we have
Well,
more of an
we
obligation
even
to
have
the
that
public than we
situation
do
with
to
superintendents,
future
you know?
potential employees.
Yeah.
Well, and most applications have a checkbox. Like, do you want your previous employer or current employer to know?
Well,
Okay, for the salary on the contract for the 2021-2022 school year, food service is $12.25, para is $12.25, custodian is the $12.51, and secretary is $13.71. So starting next year, it'll be $12.75 for food service, $12.75 for para, $13.01 for custodian, and $14.21 for secretary. So, and like I said, these are all salaries that can be negotiated next year with but it's, I mean, it puts it slightly under, but then that would have to stay under that contract for, until we would make a change. So.
Okay, under other, we have 3 teachers up for tenure. Am I saying names?
You're
Gabe,
the chair.
would you like me to say the names?
Well, we can we can stick to our current status if you guys want, but I have to tell you, like, I think we need to change this up because it does, some of this is kind of ridiculous on the the hidden nature of the names, but I think it also, like, I think Crystal said it, just like coaches and things of that nature, I think it allows for decisions to be made, research to be conducted, as we go through. Again, I'll be a broken record on this, but it's public school.
Yeah.
Like, this is all public knowledge. There's very few restrictions on what cannot be discussed or revealed, and I think that's a cultural change for us. We've been a little
Aren't
bit.
these people already
restricted.
employed by our district?
Yeah, there's no policy saying you can't.
I mean,
Yeah.
And if there is, we'll talk about
So
it.
anyway, who are the tenured
Okay,
names?
yeah.
Fire away.
The 3 are Ryan Hemberry, Matthew Muthler, and Matthew Rohrig. And that's all I have, if anybody has nothing else.
And all 3 of them have successfully completed all of the requirements for tenure.
Yes.
Cool.
And that's always the question. Tenure and level 2 certification is different. Like with the tenure, it's 6 satisfactory evaluations,
Wouldn't that be on?
completing an induction program.
It's
and
actually just the 3 years of satisfactory
yes. Okay.
in the same district. Yeah.
Yeah, and then the instructional level 2 is the 24 credits they apply to PDE, get their instructional level 2.
Transportation, Gabe.
There's nothing on the agenda for transportation unless somebody has any questions.
I only have one. I noticed that there's no activity bus for the month of January on Thursdays.
The activity bus is scheduled by the athletic director, and that's dependent on the activities that they have assigned.
Okay.
So
The amount of days they have were cut by the board a while back. And they used to have those days as actually running, but the board cut that long before I was on the board and before I retired.
yeah.
So we could extend those days and
Why,
run
do you know?
buses,
Do you know why they cut them?
save money.
Yeah, I think it's 143 days right now. And what what the board wanted, I'm just saying this because I wasn't a member of the board, but I know the purpose behind it. They wanted to make sure that the activity buses were scheduled on the days, specifically some of the junior high activities, so that they were running when kids are here. We had buses running when we had no practices and no activities.
Well,
And
can't you
it-
do that on a day-to-day basis and say, hey, we don't need you today? Or no?
Well,
hard.
it's too hard. It's much easier to have it scheduled, so they know specifically they have to be there.
Well, I understand that, but if something were to change, because it's winter.
Oh,
you know,
it does
and-
change. It does change.
Well, now we need buses for like this Thursday.
Yeah.
We don't have
So-
them. And I
yeah.
noticed the drama club, they're doing stuff. They're here after school. They don't need a ride home or.
Yeah, what the athletic director would do if we weren't there that day or the activity was canceled, they cancel the activity bus that day and then they have that day to move to another date. So that's what we do right now.
I can talk to the athletic director about that.
Okay. That's why I was just wondering, because the way all my games have been canceled and now I have practice, the kids need a ride home, and I don't think it's the parents' job to run all the way up here and get them.
Yeah, it'd probably be good to find out how many additional days we need and add just those days instead of saying we're going to cover every day, because we'd just be driving empty buses then.
Yeah, well, I understand that. So,
And I
don't
think
we
the
need every
athletic
day.
director can look at the practice schedules on the calendar and stuff to see that as well.
okay.
All right. If nobody else has anything, we can move to policy and procedure. Aaron?
All right. Yep. Policies for approval for the second read. Policy 626 federal fiscal compliance. Policy 626.1 travel reimbursement, federal programs. Policy 918 Title I parent and family engagement. Policy 918.1 Sullivan County Elementary School Title I parental involvement. And I believe Doug had said that there was no changes to these.
Yep,
Last
those are just
time.
reviews.
Just reviews. Number 2 is a memorandum of understanding between the Pennsylvania State Police and the Sullivan County School District.
Yeah, this MOU is an agreement that districts are required to have with their local police. And of course, for us here in the county, it's the state police. So this is an agreement that we've had in place with them for a number of years now. And their representatives met with Rob Reeves and I this morning and went through this, and essentially they said it looks fine with them. There's no changes for us to make.
Okay. Anybody else have anything on that?
No, that was my same question. Thanks.
Number 3 is the appointment of board members to listed organizations. The PSBA representative, Blast IU-17 representative, NTCC representative, and the Comprehensive Plan Steering Committee members. There'll be 2 of them, one of all the other ones.
I know the last meeting Gabe said we'll wait till this month when everyone was settled into the committees and figuring out what they wanted to do. So these would be motions for this January meeting to assign these positions.
I've had a high level of recommendations that Hal takes on the first 3.
Yeah, well, that's part of the problem. How's the first 3?
Yeah.
And he needs help. I think people should get involved and try those. There's a lot of information there. There's a lot of reading, but it's good things. If you want to be a good board member, the School Board Association is interesting. I mean, there's a lot to read. The representative on the IU board and Northern Tier you really get an inside look of how those organizations are run. And I'd be willing to give them all up.
Make them sound so exciting.
What a salesman.
Man. Yeah.
Hal, is
Since I quit.
is the IU meetings, are they held, where are they held at now?
They're held in either Canton or Williamsport. You can go either place, but you have to go to one or the other. You can't go virtual.
Right.
Okay. The NTC's obviously is in at the Votech School in Towanda. And part of the problem is Tuesday night is our board meeting, Wednesday night is the IU meeting, and Thursday night is the Northern Tier Career Center in the same week. So for one person to do them all, you're on the road 3 nights in a row.
Yeah.
I will be honest, but I am interested in the NTC representative. However, I'm in the boat that Hal is in. It's stressful in time, and I don't want to spread myself too thin. But I am interested, so it's something I can mull over before next Tuesday, and I'll let you guys know via email.
That would be good. I think people should to get involved and see what's going on, and you'll like that. That's probably of all the jobs. That's probably the best one, if there's a good one.
Well, I was
Yeah.
going to ask, is the process just to email you if we're interested, Gabe?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, if you guys want to, I mean, today's Tuesday. I guess if you want to email me by like the end of the week, so that we can identify. I mean, I'm sure you guys will be fighting each other for this, but if you want to email me by the end of the week with what your thoughts are, that way, if we do have an open slot, we can have a discussion and have a plan before the meeting next Tuesday. I do know I was part of IU. I was on the IU. I guess they call it the board, really, as a representative of each district in the IU. You become a board member for that overarching blast unit. But there is a lot of like you do learn a lot about the different things that are going on. Also, there was a lot of service-based pieces that you learn about, what's available to the school. So it is decent. Doug, with the comprehensive plan steering committee, what is the time? I would say what's the time constraints that you would be looking for, just so people know?
Well, it would, when we get into this, it's going to be a couple of nights a month, I imagine. So, or a couple, it might be even some virtual work or committee work that they'd be working on.
Okay.
So they would, we'll kind of have our committees. They'll be involved in a lot of it. So since they're on the steering committee, so, or at least participation or having input to a lot of it.
Okay. Good deal. Yeah, if you guys want to let me know by the end of the week, and
another thing, along with those 4 things, and this is something for whoever's going to be in charge of it. The Hall of Fame committee, which had a board member on it too. If you look in our webpage, everybody in the Hall of Fame committee no longer belongs to our school. Or on the school board. Our school board rep is not on anymore. And obviously the athletic director is gone and is on it. So somebody needs to look into that, Lynn.
Yeah, I think we did bring that up at one point, but thanks for bringing that up again.
Yeah.
Yeah, something needs to be done there.
Yeah, I think Mary Elise, didn't you have interest in that comprehensive plan steering committee?
I mean, I just emailed Gabe and said I'd like to do that. So yes. Yeah, I this is something our organization's done. And so I just, really interested in learning more and being a part of that, but obviously happy to, to talk to others who are interested too.
Great. Yeah, that's fantastic. I wanted to add 2 things, Aaron, not necessarily for tonight, but for your potential agenda items for later on. And one is I'd like for us to review the public comment policy at some point, because I do want to change how we do that a little bit to make it a little bit more open and not so rigid in regards. Not everyone that comes to a meeting is even comfortable speaking in public. So to sort of make it a regimented process. So I don't remember what the policy even says, but we should take a peek at that and see what it says, for one. And then the second item is for the board members. Where is our comprehensive policies? Are they all on the website?
You mean our policy manual?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Proposed.
under our webpage, under administration policies.
Okay.
And then you can put in a subject and, or, you know, click on policies, they'll all show up. Or if you're doing a search, you can put a search word in and it'll bring up all the policies that has that search word or phrase in it.
Okay.
So I could go on there and look up like our policy on like bullying
Oh, yeah,
Yes.
everything is online.
and
See,
vaping.
that's, yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
our policies, we're a part of PSBA's policy review. Essentially, you know, when you look at those policies, they have all the citations on the last page. And usually that's what we're doing when there's a change to, you know, a federal state statute. They'll review it. They'll make sure that the verbiage in the policy matches that. If it doesn't, they'll send us a policy notification saying that we need to review and make changes. That's when the administrative team looks at it. We make our changes, then it comes to the board for a first review. And that first and second read is actually part of school law. So that's why we use those terms, first read, second read. So it comes to first read and you can review it. That's where you make changes. It comes back again to the board. You know, essentially the board isn't satisfied. It can come back in front of the board as many times as you need it to in order to get it to where you want it. Then after those changes are made, we update those on the online. And then it goes back to PSBA. Their legal team looks at it, reviews it, makes sure it's correct, and then it's posted. So yeah, that's available to anyone in the world. They can go to our website under administration policies and they can see what our policies are. So they're available to everyone.
Yep. Yeah, I just wanted to confirm that for everybody.
Okay, well, then the other thing is other, if anybody else has anything else for policy and procedure.
Nope, I'm good.
So we're good.
All right, I think we navigated through that. That's it. The only other thing I'll bring up is we had discussed about, not solidified yet, but the board's likely going to have a, I guess we'd call it a retreat meeting. Probably to accommodate scheduling, it will be likely the first part of February.
Oh, and Gabe, you had asked about board training for new members, and the IU is putting together trainings both, and Hal said it's available virtually too from the IU. But there will be in-person sessions that they'll be hosting in the evenings if the board wants to attend those. So probably you'd want to go over that with the board.
Yep. Yeah, I'm trying to collect some information for you guys just on maintaining the appropriate learning units to, you know, keep office. And then potentially we can, you know, if the board wants to, we could just do it individually virtually if you want. But the other option is if we do have a meeting, say in February or throughout the course of the year to, excuse me, potentially to even talk about the comprehensive plan, you know, do a full board retreat to chat about that. We could do a session with PSBA where they would, you know, first part of the meeting in the evening or something could be a learning unit, which I think we've done in the past. So nothing you need to answer me on now, but I will try to maintain some type of offering so people can track, you know, what hours they need over the next 3 years, 4 years. It's nothing that has to be like an emergency right now. We have to have training. But if you have any questions on it or I can help you with it, let me know. Other than that, that's all I have. Is there any other public input or anybody that wants to speak? I'm not sure who's all in the audience.
It's a negative.
Oh, yep. And Lance is signaling that there's no one has contacted him. So
cool.
Thanks, folks.
Thanks, everybody. I appreciate it.
Yep.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.